them for you. So if you have any sort of impediment, if you're shy, if your voice is not okay, if you're not in an appropriate environment, feel free to leave the questions in the chat room and I will be happy to pass them to Travis. However, I do encourage you, if there's nothing preventing you from communicating directly with our author, to do so. That's it pretty much. We're going to have an hour together. So as I said, just a couple of quick questions from myself and then please prepare to ask yours. So Travis, what is next? We've had already, well, 2 out of 3 books translated into Romanian. We are keeping our fingers crossed for the 3rd, especially me, since I really want to do it. But what's going on next? Are you already thinking of your next project?
Well, apart from the 3rd book that comes out in November, and then ideally you will be translating, and thank you again for translating both of these. I really appreciate all of the effort. So, the 3rd book follows Fern, who is a secondary character in this book. And that book is called Brigands and Bread Knives in the States and comes out in November in, I guess, a month and a half, something like that. Right now I'm working on something completely different. I'm about 100 and something thousand words into it, and I wish the end was in sight, but it's not quite yet. And it is not in the Legends and Lattes universe at all. It is a lit RPG, which is more or less a new genre. I narrate a lot of them, hundreds of them, and as such, I have developed opinions. So I'm writing one the way that I would want it written, and it's currently called Four Bastards and a Baby. We'll see if that name survives to the end. But I'm currently writing that. I'm already over deadline. I really need to finish it this year, but I think I've got at least another 60 or 70,000 words to go before I finish. But we'll see how that goes.
Really now, quite interesting. Whoa. To be honest, I was really expecting that. I don't know why. I just had this feeling that I, for one, would love to stay in this verse that you open the gates towards for us with Legends and Lattes and with the next ones. But I really feel that authors should maybe alternate a bit between worlds. And I don't know, I just have this feeling that maybe you'll come back to this universe.
I think it's likely I will come back when I have the story that I want to tell. There is an anthology of Legends and Lattes short stories that will come out, I think, within the next year. That includes the short Goblins and Greatcoats, and then I believe 4 others that I wrote. So if you really want to head back, I do have some shorts. One is about Thimble, one is about Tandri. There's one that happens shortly after Legends and Lattes, called Cavaliers and Coffees, about a rival coffee shop. And so there's a few shorts. And then when the right thing comes around, or I have the right thing I want to talk about, ideally I'll head back to the world of Legends and Lattes.
Sounds perfect, at least to me. I did notice the short story with couplets was listed on Goodreads already, so I marked it, and I was really hoping for it to be a part of something larger. And now that I have my confirmation, I'm quite glad to hear about that, especially the bit about Tandri, because Tandri is one of my favorites. So, yeah, big love for that. Great then. So guys, I hope you had the time to accommodate a bit and that you noted down all the info that Travis already offered us about what's coming up next and that you're really excited. So this will be my first invitation for you to interact. So whoever feels that they're ready to ask a question, please raise a hand, either by showing it to the camera or by using the emoticon, the emoji that you have on your Zoom, or write the question in the chat and I will voice it for you. I see Anna already. Please.
Gosh, I haven't been in a Zoom realm in a while. But hi, Festival. I'm a huge fan of your books. I've discovered them around last year, and I've really enjoyed them. And what I wanted to know is, I read about you a bit before, and in past interviews, you mentioned that you used to play D&D in high school, and I know you're still playing video games as well as creating video games, which I think is amazing. And I wanted to know, how does your gaming experience and how does your tabletop RPG experience inform your writing process for these books, if it informs it at all?
If it does. Well, like you said, I played tabletop in high school, and it's been decades now, so I have never really had the time or been able to find a good group to do tabletop as an adult. It's just so hard, especially once you have kids and life, and so I haven't really done tabletop in a long time. The game work I did, a lot of it was like Dungeons and Dragons adjacent, because it was action role-playing games. I did quite a few of those. And so I think there's a certain amount of just familiarity with the vibes, if more than anything else, because I've spent a long time steeped in them. Um, and I'm sure that that figures in a lot of ways, because I think that Legends and Latte's books trade on a lot of like vibes that I think that if you do tabletop or you play Baldur's Gate or whatever, you are familiar with. And I think that's part of what makes them somewhat cozy, is because it's easy to get into, because you don't have to go learn about a whole other world. You just kind of get the feeling. And while they have their own unique things, it's kind of their own unique things. Um, Most, I think, what I got from game development is honestly just a way of working. Because game development is delivering something in a limited period of time that is kind of equal parts like creative and art, and catering specifically to your audience, doing something that you know they want, because if they don't buy it, you go out of business. So you thread the needle between something for me and something for them, in a way, on a time pressure, because everybody loses your job if you don't do it. And I think that that's probably been really useful as far as writing goes. And weirdly, just I write like an engineer, so it has to work. It has to work every day. I can't leave a mess behind me, otherwise the bugs pile up, and then I have to go solve them later, and it's really challenging. So I think there's just a lot of things process-wise that I've gotten, which sadly have nothing to do with the types of games I made, but mostly have to do with just the act of doing something creative on a schedule.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you, Anna, for this. This was a lovely question. I, for one, am always curious about what sort of processes our writers are going through, and how does a normal day, a normal creative day look for them. And there's always been this discussion about should we outline and plan everything ahead? Should we just go with the flow and not be sure if we're going to kill some characters in the process or whatever is going to happen? I've heard things about, the characters overtaking the writer's brains and souls, and making them do unexpected things. So all this character riot is very funny for me somehow. So I was curious, how is it like for you, Travis? And did it change from the first book to the present?
I think every book is different, because every book is basically a different puzzle that you're solving. I have things that I think so the first three books were all outlined end to end, and the book that you read is more or less the same as the outline. Because I have trouble wandering around while I write. If I don't know where I'm going, I get lost, and then I get upset, and then I don't, and I can't finish. The current book I'm writing, I outlined half of it, and then I roughly outlined the back half. So I have all of these milestones. I know exactly how it ends. I know the main things that need to happen, but because it's a different kind of book, that actually has some POV chapters and is more plot driven and less vibes driven, and is also kind of a adventure. I left more space, which is still hard for me, and I'm still struggling deciding if that's the way I'm going to work. So what I end up doing is when I get to a chapter, I try and outline the chapter right before I write it. At the very least, I know what the chapter is. And if I can't outline the chapter before I write it, then I don't know what the chapter is. And I can't work at all. So that's what I'm currently doing, which is a little bit of a hybrid for me. I don't know if the next book will be the same or will be different. I think it'll always depend on the demands of the book and what kind of book I'm writing.
Mm-hmm. So you're still somehow a slave to your characters.
I don't know if that's
Partially.
true. My characters don't tend to send me off in directions I don't want to go. I know I know who they are, and I know where they're going. Most of the surprises that happen for me in this book is that something that took 2 sentences to outline suddenly ends up being 3 chapters because it's more important than I thought it was, or it takes more time to resolve than I thought it would, or there's an opportunity to accomplish something else there. But I tend to think of, like, I know who my characters are, but I think of what needs to be, how do things need to change in this chapter? What's going to be different? And if I can't figure out what's different, then I don't know why I'm writing the chapter. So I have to figure out what the change is. And then my characters, because I know them, will support that change. It has to be a change that makes sense in the context of the characters that I have. But I don't suddenly discover that, oh my God, so-and-so's going way over there. I never expected this. I get some unexpected things, but not things that tend to break the story, and I have to figure out how to pull it back together again.
Yeah, it does make sense actually. And I think that it still transpires that you're a very organized writer, and then you like to, create some sort of a puzzle and fit the pieces so that they create something that makes sense in the end. But I was curious about something else, and between brackets, I will keep encouraging people to interact. Do not forget, guys, they also have a chat function. So if because of any reasons you cannot voice your questions, I will happily do that for you. Bracket closed, back to my question. You mentioned that it's also important to write stories for the people who are going to read them. And of course, especially for a long series, I think that we're getting some sort of fan service at some point. How do you feel about that? Have you reached that point yet or not?
I don't want to get to the point on anything where I'm writing for fan service or writing a formulaic retread of a previous book. So every one of the Legends and Lattes books is different. They are all trying to do different things that are generally things that I care about at the time. And I don't know how to write a book that doesn't have something I'm interested in. People often asked for, like, can I just get a straight sequel to Legends and Lattes? They've got a coffee shop. I just want more cozy vibes. But I don't know what that story's about. What's that story about? What's happening to Viv? What's different about her at the end of that story that isn't upsetting because now she doesn't own a coffee shop? How do you let somebody get to a happily ever after without destroying it for them to provide an engine for some other story? So I don't want to get at that place, but that's not the same, I think, as being aware of who your audience is and giving them a way to keeping their needs in mind, right? I care about the experience of the person reading it. If they know what they're getting, I want to make sure that they're getting what they think they're getting. If I, it's like the difference between tricking someone into reading your book and having them legitimately want to read it. So if I tell you what this story is about, then I want to deliver on that for you. And if you've read the blurb and if you've seen the cover and if you've read the title and you have a specific kind of expectation for what that book is, I want to meet it. In some ways, it's like opening the door for as many people as possible. If there's something that's not important to me, but in so doing, I can make it accessible to more people, then I should do that thing, because their needs matter too, not just mine. And so it's that balance of what's important to me versus what's important to the people who are reading this. And at the end of the day, I want it to be entertaining, you know? I'm not going to experience the book the same way other people experience it. Other people are going to read it and hopefully have a good time. Once I'm done with it, I am not going to have a good time reading it. I've beaten it into the ground. My experience won't be the same. So I still have to care about the experience of whoever's reading it for the first time.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Sure, it's meaningful insight, at least for me, and hopefully for everybody else. Anna, I see that you might have another question for Travis, please.
Yes, I have another question. I've read in past interviews that you don't often get asked about your editing process. I know that Legends and Lattes initially was a self-published novel, and now with your sequel as well, I know things may be a little different. So I kind of wanted to know, how has your editing process shifted from a self-published novel to now working with a publisher, maybe with an agent? Yeah, I would like to hear more about that.
So my editing process actually hasn't changed that much. For Legends and Lattes, I had it edited by a fellow author who I narrate audiobooks for, who has an editorial background. And the way that we edited was a little non-standard. She would edit a chapter a day. She would send the changes back to me. I would go through those changes, make any alterations I was going to make, and then I would send it back to her. And it was sort of a ping pong back and forth until we got to the end of the book. And if I saw trends in the sorts of things that I was fixing or altering or updating, I would then try and do that ahead and like internalize the lessons I was getting from the edit, so that ideally, if I was making mistakes or if I had like a writing tick I wanted to evict, that I was making that happen, so that the next book would edit a little cleaner, or I would have learned something. I would have moved things forward. And I still did that with the second and third books, even with traditional publishing, and I still used my indie editor first. So she went through everything first, and then I sent it into Tor McMillan for a final edit, which is honestly a lot lighter edit than what I did. So I still like having both of those, and I still plan to do both. I think for editing, it's like using finer and finer mesh. The more times you can pass it through finer and finer mesh, the more grit you're going to extract. And that's the goal, is to have like the cleanest, best book I can at the end. So I don't want to remove any part of the process that would result in making a better book. The main differences for trad versus what I did before is that there is a separate copy edit phase, where there's just a copy editor who goes through just for kind of the very final vagaries of punctuation or M-N- use or that kind of thing. But that's pretty minor stuff by the time I've gotten to it. There's very few changes. The other part of, I guess, my editing process is that since I narrate the audiobooks too, I narrate them right after the final copy edit, before it's finally set, because there's no better way to find any final remaining errors than to read it out loud, which means I get to do that before the final print is locked. And I almost always find a couple of things that I would have found if I narrated it later and been really annoyed about. So it's a nice little extra step I get to do that not many authors get to do.
Thank you so much. That's actually really insightful. It's cool that your narrating experience also helps with the editing.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for the perspective, Travis. In the meanwhile, we have gotten a question in the chat as well, and I'm going to read it now. It comes from Alexandra, and it says, "My big curiosity right now after I read Bookshops and Bone Dust is in the new book, Brigands and Bread Knives, where our beloved Fern is the main character. We'll meet again with Pot Roast and Satchel. We need this trio again.
So you will see Pot Roast again. Pot Roast is definitely in the book. You're not going to run into Satchel. He's off doing stuff. And while he is mentioned and his Satchel is still around, he is off doing other stuff. I had a short story that I started writing for him and didn't finish. So I know where he went and what he was doing, but I just haven't put it in anything yet. So no Satchel just yet.
Just yet, because apparently you always have something in your sleeve. Yeah. So I hope the answer is satisfactory, and please keep them coming. As I said, we do have just a limited time together tonight, and I would really love for you guys to have the full experience. I can see Alina. Alina,
Yes,
do you want
yes.
to say something? Great, go ahead, please.
Hi. So I have a lot of ideas of adventure books, and I always get in trouble when I need to decide if I make it for young adult or if I stay in the middle grade section, let's say. And I wanted to ask you if, when you start the story, I mean, do you have some things that you have to, I don't know, to go in a certain direction to make it for young adults? Or because right now, for instance, I have a new idea, and I honestly don't know what criteria would be for a publisher to select it either in the young adult or leave it in the middle grade school books.
Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, I don't have experience pitching books for middle grade. So I don't want to pretend that I know precisely what the particulars would be, because I don't. I've never attempted to do that. My assumptions are going to be that length and language level are a large part of it. I think a lot of
No, but what I mean is for the story. I mean, you think you have? Is there something that you do for young adults that is, I don't know how to. Is there any censorship, let's say, for young adults, meaning that there would be people under 18 years old that would read it? I mean, is it something that you need to bear in mind when you write for young adults instead of other categories, be it middle grade or be it adults? Because I feel that I'm going into that direction, but I cannot. I'm not in the mind of a publisher to know how exactly they analyze it, or what would be pros and cons for putting something in the action or in the characters and that.
So one of the I think there's a complicated thing about young adult, because there's young adult and there's young adult, because there's plenty of young adult fiction that's quite adult, and young adults aren't stupid, and they don't like to be talked down to. So if they feel like they're being pandered to, or that you're withholding the truth from them, I think that they're likely to call foul and not want to read it, just because they feel like they're not getting the real thing. I mean, having kids, the things that our kids are exposed to these days with the internet, it's we have a fairly unfiltered world at this point. I don't know at the publisher level, and it may depend on the publisher, what they would require of you. At bottom, I feel like you write the story you want to write, and then you find out where it belongs. I feel like just being true to the story that you wanted. What's that?
Why did you get into this section of young adult? Did you do it like this? I mean, did you write for?
Well, see, and my book isn't really young adult. My book isn't really young adult, and I didn't write it for young adult either. It's about somebody in their 40s, retiring and starting a small business. It's, in a lot of ways, it's weird to think of it as young adults caring about it at all, because it's largely talking about life experiences they can't have had yet. So I did not consciously write it for any specific audience except what I thought the book was, which I guess is what I'm saying, that if you have a story that you're interested in, that means something to you, and you want to talk about something in that story, just write that story. And then If
Okay.
you can always change, you can always tweak something. You can always edit a little bit. You can always say, oh, well, this is a little bit harsh and I would like to make it a little bit more palatable to this audience after the fact. But getting it written in the first place and writing what you think the story is feels like the most important job that you have.
Mm-hmm. Because the way I see it, I think that many people have told me that I have like a teenage type of feelings and of sensitivity. So this means that I go to extremes in emotions, and it's easier to write for this category, probably because in my view, I think adults are more interested in the action or in other things and less than in I don't know, in finding characters that go through extreme states of minds over emotions, or I think to me that would be the let's say the attraction of writing actually something that would go into a series of young adults literature than to write for adults. I feel, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that adults right now they are going into this category because maybe they are finding the feelings they don't find in the adult category anymore, because it's more about social, I don't know, description of problems that maybe are not as important as how you relate to real life and to people around you. It's like, I mean, I feel like the young adult is like a more poetic view of the world, if you want, and much more raw than the adult literature has become nowadays. Maybe it's only my personal view, but it's how I feel it. I feel it's more raw and more authentic.
Well, and maybe that's why so many adults read YA literature. I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think that you should. I think there's plenty of adults that want that. When I'm writing, I mostly care about the characters and stuff what's their personal change? Why are they different now? How do they relate to one another? I care about that stuff. I'm nearly 50. That's what I'm most interested in. And just straight action, I think, is kind of boring. I don't care. I've seen enough CGI explosions. I don't need any more of them. They don't mean anything to me. So I guess I would just say don't sell yourself short on who is maybe interested in what you're going to do. If it's interesting to you and you care about it, it's going to be interesting to somebody else. I would say write what you are interested in, and if you're interested in raw emotions, then write that. And I think that there's plenty of adults that are interested in it. And if it's categorized as YA, there's, again, plenty of adults who read YA because that's what they want. So I wouldn't worry about it. Personally, I would say don't worry about it. Just write it.
Okay. Okay. And
I'm always worrying about who will be interested in what I have to write. I have no idea if there's an audience for this. I worry about it right now. Is anybody going to want this? This is what I want out of this genre. But does anybody else want what I want? I don't know, because most of the stuff I read is not that way. But that's all right. Maybe I will luck out, and there's a bunch of people that I'm just not, they're wanting the same thing I want and they just don't have it. So, but I suffer with the same, like, I don't know, does somebody want this or not? Am I writing it for the right people or not? I don't know. And I don't think you can ever really know until you put it out there. So
yeah, you're right. And I wanted to ask you if you write from your own experience, if you, I mean,
Gosh,
how do you, I know it's a stupid idea, because I mean, I do the same, and sometimes I have ideas from my own life, from my friends, sometimes they just come out of the blue, or from something I heard on the news, and it develops in a huge thing. But I'm just curious, how does it work for you? Not to get tips, but just as an experience, how you started.
So for me, all three of the Legends and Lattes books are basically just me and whatever I'm feeling and struggling with at the time. So the first book is basically my life. I made video games in my 40s, and I retired, and I moved to a new town, and I went into a new industry, audiobook narration, and I discovered this whole community of people that was really great. And that's basically Legends and Lattes. And then the second book, I tried 3 times to write a second book, and I failed. And then I wrote a book from the wreckage of those books. And it's a book about failing and not and that the failures are not necessarily bad, that things arise from all of your failures. They're basically the fertile ground that your later successes come out of. And then the third book is basically about learning how to disappoint people you care about and say no, which is a thing I have a real problem with. So all of those felt very relevant to my particular experience. It's also, and it's a book that I expect to potentially disappoint people because maybe it's not what they want. It's got more action and adventure in it. It's not about setting up a small business in a fantasy world. So, but I have to be okay with it. So it's a book about the problems I have writing the book. The book I'm writing now is very different. It's more plot driven, and I'm approaching it in a different way because it's a different kind of book. And so there's always going to be parts of me and my experience in it, but it's driven by different things. And I will find out if that works for me or not. Maybe it will be disaster. I hope not.
Yeah, it's really cool that you have the courage to experiment with every new book, actually, from what you're saying.
I would rather do that than just put out cookie cutter books of the same kind. I just don't have any interest in that. I don't want to be because that would just sounds boring and it sounds kind of lifeless. And that's not why I would want to write a book anyway. I don't want to write a book just to have written a book. I want to write a book because it's something I care about that ideally somebody else connects to, because that's the part that's good, is when somebody else reads it and says, oh my God, I had that experience. I get it. Or I enjoyed that for this reason. And I don't want to just retread old ground, because I don't feel like you wouldn't make any new connections to anything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you a lot, Alina, for all your questions. And thank you, Travis, again, for satisfying the curiosity of, there you go, writers, aspiring writers, and people who are maybe struggling sometimes to make their writing better. In the meanwhile, we've got two brand new questions in the chat. So Malina says, hi, Travis. Just wanted to start off by saying I'm a big fan of your books, especially because of their cozy vibe while still keeping the conflict hanging in the air, albeit low stakes. How do you personally balance writing something warm while still keeping readers hooked so that they don't feel like putting the book down? Vibes are great and all, but tension is very important.
So for me, this is about asking questions in the book that I hope you want to have answered. I think a lot of people say raising the stakes, and the only way that they accomplish that is with like physical peril, and I just don't think that that's very interesting stakes after a while. So threat of death or threat of damage is just not. It just doesn't feel like excitement to me past a certain point. So what I want is a question that I want an answer to. And I want lots of different kinds of questions. I want the big question, like, what's this book about? Where are they going to end up at the end? But then I want smaller and smaller questions at different scales of time that I want an answer to. And ideally, at the end of a chapter, I want you to feel like this question is important to you. And if you read the next chapter, maybe you'll get the answer. And then the other half of that is paying off those questions. So I think you build trust with your reader by answering small questions reasonably frequently. They they want to know something, and then you tell them. You find a way to tell them that's interesting. Hopefully it's an interesting question, and hopefully it's an interesting answer. And after you've done that a few times, they start to trust you that, oh, these medium-term questions and long-term questions, you're also going to give me answers to. I want to know about those too. So if you can nest those questions in, then that's, I think, tension, right? It's like, I want this, I get this. I want this, how long until I get this? So it's just paying off those questions. And I think for me, that's stakes. That's the tension that makes me want to read a book. And every time I get to a chapter where nothing changes or no questions are answered, that's when I'm in danger of putting the book down.
Thank you so much for this. And I'm just going to jump straight in because we have finally a lot of questions in the chat. And also I want to address an invitation to somebody. But first, there's Alexandra, who's asking or saying, I read at the end of Bookshops and Bondas that you have a hard time trying to write the second book. remember, I don't know if you remember that, but we also talked about it in last year when you had the first intervention with us. So my question is the second book syndrome really that hard? Because the Access College idea sounded really good.
Maybe all books are hard. It feels like everyone is a new kind of hard. And whatever I do to adjust to what was hard about the previous book, something new makes it challenging. So I feel for me, it's hard work. Writing a book is hard work. And I think that the first book was the easiest, mostly because it was straightforward and because I didn't have to please anybody or think about anybody else's opinion at all. And so it was the easiest of the bunch. The book I'm writing right now is hard for totally different reasons. Brigands and Bread Knives was hard for totally different reasons. I had a lot of personal upheaval and I didn't get to write that book straight through. So I wrote it piecemeal all over the place, which was also challenging. And I worried about it the whole time because it was a different kind of book. And I was worried and still am worried that people won't like it, that they will feel like they're not getting the book that they want. So they all feel hard. I saw a post from a friend of mine who's written like 80 novels, and he was saying, oh, it just gets easier. It just gets easier and easier and easier. And I don't feel like I'm on the same road. I feel like I'm going the opposite direction and they just continue to be hard. And I don't mean that as a discouragement. I think it's just hard work. And it may really depend on the book itself. Like sometimes it feels like they've just got more to do to bash them into the shape they need to be in. Or I set myself up a problem that's harder to solve than the previous one. I don't know if that's a good answer. As far as the Actors College idea goes, the Tandry short story does have some Actors College stuff. It's like when Tandry's in college, although it's actually kind of Twilight Zone-y. It's actually probably the darkest story of the whole bunch, which is a little weird. And I kind of I wanted to do a mystery. But I'm not very good at writing mysteries, so I don't think I could do that at a full novel scale. So I did a short, which is where Zill came from in Brigands and Bread Knives. So there's a short called Goblins and Greatcoats, which is basically my mystery short, and then that character ends up sticking around for book 3. Maybe I don't know if I could ever do a full length mystery or not, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, you never know. I guess that also answers Alexandra's second question. Is there any chance that a future book will be set at Access College?
Yeah, well, we got a short. We'll see what happens. I really have no idea what the next Legends book will be. It'll probably be something will change in my life, and I'll be like, oh, this is what I want to talk about in a book now. I just need something dramatic to happen. Or not that dramatic, just some sort of weird personal struggle that I think somebody else might relate to.
Yeah, that sounds very, very promising, at least to me. Before going on, I would like to remind everybody that we have around 20 minutes left, so there's not much. Not great, not terrible, but please be encouraged to interact more and to ask more questions or say anything else that you might have in mind related to Travis's work, his books, whatever else you feel like telling him. And I would like to address, because I know that we have some special guests here. I know that we have some people from Baldree, that's a city in Romania, and they're having a watch party. I don't know, Travis, if you can see them. There's a whole group over there.
I do. Hi.
They're like enthusiastically waving at you. And I just wanted to ask you guys, like, do you have any curiosities, anything to say, any comments, anything whatsoever? We'd really love to involve you if you have anything to ask or to say or whatever. You can ask about what kind of coffee does Travis like to drink, or how is his dog these days? Or maybe he got more dogs.
Old. She's old. Barking in her sleep.
Oh, okay. How old is she?
I think she's about 12.
Oh, Still having some time left.
Still having some time
That's
left. She's a
good.
little terrier. She's very sedate.
Oh God, so sweet. Love it. There you go. Come on, Vaslo, you can do this. Hopefully. You can unmute yourselves. We are rooting for you now. Yes, maybe. Yes.
Oh, we're typing.
Okay, while they're typing. Okay. So the question is, do you follow a method or are you just writing as the words come to you? Do you plan your chapters or they just write themselves following your characters?
So usually, and for the past 3 books, I outline the entire book, and every chapter I outline in plain text. Here's what happens in the chapter, just like I was telling the story to somebody in short, because I have to know where I'm going or I can't get there. There's still plenty of things to figure out in between, a remarkable number of things to figure out in between, which is why things are hard, I think. So I don't just sit down and write. I know people who do. I wish I could. I can't. Even if I know what happens in the chapter, I still am always thinking about the fact that I could use 20 different scenes, 100 different scenes to accomplish this same thing. Which one's the best one? I don't know. And eventually I just have to pick one and go. And that's a lot of what holds me up. Where do I start this scene? Do I start it at the beginning? Do I start it in the middle? Sometimes it's better if you start it in the middle. Sometimes it's better if it's already over and everybody's just talking about what happened. It just depends on whether it's a scene that I'm interested in hearing, I guess. So I'm figuring out all of the gristle in between the bones and muscle for any given chapter, but I have to know what the bones are.
Thank you for this. And in the meanwhile, we do have a question from the watch party in Vaslui. And they're asking, do you have any favorite classic book that inspired your writing journey?
It's probably a bunch of books, and they're all mashed together. I feels kind of like a mulch pile in my brain of all the things I ever liked, kind of inform what you would do. So I really liked Brian Jake's Redwall series, for instance, and you can kind of see the influence of that. There's a lot of food, and there's talking rat people. I love The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And while these books are not really like those, there's that idea of food and travel and a world that's not our own that has always been something I was interested in. I always liked fantasy, especially when I was young, that felt like I could go there. Like there was a chance that if I opened the wardrobe or went around the corner or did the thing, I could really be there. And so I still write and read speculative fiction fantasy because that's just important to me. It's still intrinsic to me. I have less belief I can get there now. So I write stories that seem more likely that they would happen to me, right? Legends and Lattes is you don't have to go very far to imagine yourself in this story. Dress up in cosplay and open your own coffee shop. Wow, you're there. It's the distance, I guess, that you might have to travel to get there has shortened for me. But God, I loved so many books as a kid. I'm also a big Stephen King fan. I really like Stephen King, and I like the way he writes people in conversations. And I don't write anything like him, but I appreciate this very kind of straightforward blue collar approach to writing, where it's not that he doesn't care about lofty things, but in the end, he wants to tell you a story in words that you understand and can relate to, that feels like he's talking to you from the same level. He's not looking down, he's not looking up, he's just looking right at you. And I really appreciate that about Stephen King. So I like that sort of straightforward approach to storytelling. I don't think I've really narrowed this down for you, but hopefully it's close enough.
Yay, I was like silently voicing my appreciation over here because I'm a huge fan of everybody you've mentioned. And I think I told you last year as well that I also had the chance to translate 3 of the Redwall books.
So
I
good.
was very, very happy about meeting Brian Jacks because I had no idea that he existed, to be honest, much to my utter shame. But now I know everything about talking rats and all sorts of animal creatures and mice living in abbeys and fighting foxes and other mean characters. So yeah, definitely recommend them. Good storytelling, good characterization, everything. But yeah, as it usually happens in the last 15 minutes, we have most of the questions. So I'm just gonna
Perfect.
jump straight to the next one. If you could choose a theme song for Legends and Latte, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to answer the song that I probably listened to the most while I was writing it. There's a artist named Jetty Ray, and I was listening to her album on repeat for a large portion of the book. And there was one song, Queen of the Universe, I think, by Jetty Ray. So I don't know if that's the real theme song or anything. It certainly doesn't sound fantasy or medieval at all, but it's the music that I most closely associate with the book.
Added to the to be listened list. Thank you. Okay, a question from AV. What's the best writing advice you would have given yourself before writing your first book? And if you could go back in time, what would you change in your process?
The writing advice I would have given to myself was that it's okay if it's simple, that it doesn't have to be complicated to be worth your time. It doesn't have to be a crazy idea. It doesn't have to have 100 characters. You can write a simple book and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you can write a book that you can already hold in your head, it's easier to get to the end of it. And so I wish I had tried that first in the many, many times that I failed to write a book. So that's what I would say. As far as changing in my current process, gosh, if I could go back, I feel like the process worked great for the first book, and now I'm just trying to figure out how to make it work for all the other ones. I guess finding a way, one of the things that works for me that I find really helpful is going to an Airbnb to write. And so on some of my previous struggles with like the second book, that's probably something I would do. Go to some other place that's pretty, and I can go out on a walk, and there's no other work I can do, and there's nothing else I can accomplish except write, and that's useful for me. It puts me in a different state of mind, and I just can't, there's no chore I can go do instead. I can't go record an audiobook that I'm behind on. You know, I can't do the bills. There's nothing else to do but write and walk. And walking, I think, is always helpful. And if I can convince myself to do it, it's useful. So that's probably what I would change about my process.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I actually I did an interview with a French author this morning, and she told me about how she likes to go and write from coffee shops just because writing at home means too many distractions for her. Or there's also the temptation of, having the TV close and maybe watch a series or having some errand to do. But if she makes herself go to a different space, then it helps her a lot in her creative process. So here's you now with the Airbnb going, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should try that too for translating. Let's see if I can afford it anytime soon, but it does.
Yeah, I
It
can't go
does
to
sound like
I would be so over caffeinated within an hour
yeah,
because I would keep
yeah,
ordering coffees.
yeah, exactly. That's the risk actually. You have to watch out your blood pressure. Okay, I have two questions from Molina in the chat in the meanwhile. So the first one goes like, do you see cozy fantasy as an evolution of slice of life storytelling traditions, or as in something entirely new that fantasy has only recently started to embrace?
I feel like it's kind of always been here. I think, The Hobbit, I think, is cozy fantasy. He just wants to go back home and eat. There's lots of traveling, there's lots of singing, there's lots of food. He's unconscious for the entire final battle. He just wants to go home. It's cozy fantasy. I think that again, Redwall and Brian Jakes' stuff is mostly cozy. It's really bloodthirsty, but it's also super cozy. You know, you want to be there and you want to be at their feasts, and there's a feeling and a vibe to it that I think is kind of cozy. I think Diana Wynne Jones's books are in some ways cozy. Every Studio Ghibli movie, okay, not every, like 70% of them that aren't emotionally destructive are like cozy fantasy. So I think it's always existed. I think it's just that there is a label for it now. And I think that people then lean into that label and lean into like the components of like the genre. But I think it definitely already existed. I think probably the most Terry Pratchett is basically, if you look at something like Going Postal, maybe, is kind of cozy fantasy. It wants to use fantasy to talk about other stuff. Yeah, so I think that people are definitely embracing it now, but I think also they're probably going through their back catalogs and saying, "Oh, yep, that's cozy fantasy. We should republish that now because it definitely is cozy fantasy. It was already there."
I do believe that there's a lot of stuff being sort of reinvented or rebranded
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, and it's very good marketing if you are able to catch it and to ride the wave, so to say. Malina has another question for you, and it goes like, if you could meet any of your characters and talk to them, who would it be and what would you ask?
It would probably be Cal, and I would ask him how to fix things around my house.
That was easy. That was an easy one.
He's
Yeah, no,
the uncle I
it
never
does.
had.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Although people who haven't read Bookshops and Bone Dust yet are in for a treat. We do have a Cal-like character in this one as well, sort of. And he's also full of surprises. So I really, really cordially invite you. I insist that you read this one as well. Especially not because I'm very partial to Fern, but also mostly because of Fern, because Fern is just lovable and enjoyable, and I love her to pieces. Good. So before taking the next question, I just would like to remind you that we have around 5 minutes left, so there's not too much time. So hurry up with whatever you have in mind, and I will try to squeeze it in. Anna, you were first, I think.
Yes, if we still have a bit of time, I just wanted to ask, I know that you also create video games besides writing and narrating books, which I find very interesting. And I spoke to some game creators here in my city, and they mentioned storytelling is a big aspect of what they do. So I kind of wanted to know, from your perspective, how does storytelling work into creating a game and into, yeah, I guess making it, let's say, logical, like a fully built environment.
So I've basically retired from making video games for the past 4 years, and I don't think I'll probably go back to it. I did it for a few decades. Weirdly, most of the games that I made were not story-driven at all. They were almost all mechanical, and the story is just like a little bit of icing you put on top. One of the challenges, I think, with story in video games, unless you're basically making one that's almost an interactive movie, like The Last of Us or that sort of game where it's really about a story and you interact nominally, is that the story is really about the player's experience. Like, what did I do? What was unique to my playthrough? And it's hard to have a story that articulates an idea or a feeling when you have all of these mechanical concerns and you need to make somebody feel good about their own personal experience. That's not to say it can't be done, but there's like specific kinds of games I think that are story games, and the rest, story is hard to do. And I didn't tend to make those because I care more about my experience playing the game rather than movie style games. So I don't know if that's a very satisfying answer, but it's probably the most accurate one I can give you.
No, I think it's a satisfying answer. Everyone's process is different, and yeah, I'd love to hear about your perspective. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna, for this. And I'll take another question in the chat from AV. They say, I'm fascinated that you wrote women main characters, and I love it. How did you make that choice? Why isn't Viv a boy orc?
So I just kind of set a rule for myself that all the characters in the books that I'm writing are female by default, and then I've changed them to male if there's a reason to do so, because I think it's been the other way around for most of the history of fantasy. So it's just kind of like my basic rule. That's not to say that I won't ever write a male main character. The book I'm writing right now has one that's a male character, but there's lots and lots of women in the book, I think more than guys. So because that's just my default rule for now. And probably forever. Because I think I don't know, I just think it needs doing. You know, you can't turn around with running into a book that's mostly male dominated in these genres. And I think that it just makes sense. It just makes sense for me. And it's not like I can't relate to these characters. Viv is basically me. She's my experience, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. I can talk about the things I want to talk about without having to use a guy.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things that I hear people who have become your fans, that they're like really encouraged while reading your books, that it doesn't really matter a lot or at all what gender you are, or what you're doing in life, or who you like, or what you like to do. You can be anything you want to, and you can be accepted however you are, as far as you're basically nice, and you do nice things. So I think that's something very important. And we have this message from Alexandra, who says, I just want to say that we really appreciate your work. You create some wonderful characters. Fern and Thimble have my heart. I agree. This was from me. I hope we have a new book every fall.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Every fall, Travis. What are you going to do with this one? I don't know. High stakes,
Write
really.
faster?
Every
I don't know.
Oh God. Okay, lovely people. I am deeply saddened to let you know that our time with Travis has gone by, and I know that it didn't really feel it going by because we, I think, had so much fun together. But before wishing Travis a productive Monday, because thank the Lord, for us it's done already, but for you it's just starting. I would like to ask him one more thing, and that would be like, Travis, if you could write about anything in the world, anything like the craziest idea that might cross your mind, and you had all the resources in place to do it, like, what would you write about and how?
Whatever I'm writing right now. Because right now I will be writing whatever seems like the thing that I should have been writing. I wish I was a good enough writer yet, or that I knew enough about writing to write something bigger. I would like to be able to write something big that feels enormous and scope and idea. But I write what I can write, and I can't write that yet.
Big, as in
scale, as in something that
like
feels
many
that feels
volumes, or something very thick,
that feels
or
only like itself. And I don't know that I'm ready to write that yet. So I guess I'll just have to work up to it.
Yeah, we are definitely here to support you. As you might have noticed, at least in Romania, you do have quite a bunch
I
of
really
fans,
appreciate
and
it.
the fandom base, I think, grew up very fast. And everybody's like wishing you luck with your new book and whatever project you have in mind. And I would like to take a moment to give thanks once again for Cărturești and Alice Books, which is your publishing house in Romania, for managing this and for allowing me to once again have a lovely conversation with you. And to thank everybody who decided to participate. You can follow Travis on social media. He's not extremely active, but he does some stuff every now and then, right, Travis? You're
Especially
there.
if I'm not behind deadline. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can see a lot of stuff on his Instagram, for example. You can see stuff about merch and about plushies, especially if you're a thimble fans. I think there is something there for you guys. If you feel ready to pay the shipping from the United States, which some people
I think it's from
don't
Australia, actually, weirdly.
whichever, I mean, the difference is not very large. But yeah, no, really, check it out. There's a lot of projects involving special editions of these books. I will make a very short confession that I actually bribed a friend who lives in the United States to bring me a whole pack of stuff. So I paid for it, and he brought it when he came to visit. So I went this way, and the poor guy had to carry the full box of,
Gosh.
special editions. And yeah, it was the owl crate stuff with everything inside. And I'm really, really grateful to him because he accepted to do that. So if you have friends living in the United States, I highly recommend going this way. If there's a will, there's a way, they say. Right. Okie dokie, guys. Thank you once again, Travis, for everything. Thank you for being such a lovely companion. And we are really looking forward to see what else you're coming up with.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.